Well, it looks like we are going live on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me for the Plant Your Seeds of Transformation podcast. Bear with me while I double check that this thing is actually live, y'all. And I appreciate, yep, so it is. So thank you all so much for taking the time to join me here today. I want to make sure that I am active in chat. So give me a second so I can make sure that I have opened that up and can respond to anybody that decides to join me. So I'm excited about sharing insights regarding perfectionism, understanding what it is, getting it out of your life because it's toxic, it's unhealthy, it is unhelpful, it is a fake form. Perfectionism is a fake form of excellence. It is not true excellence. A lot of times people think that beating up on yourself is going to motivate you and help you. And no, 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 no. We talked about this a little bit last time. You actually just re-traumatize yourself. If you're a Black woman leader who is recovering from trauma, whether or not you even realize you're recovering from trauma, be gentle with yourself. Use self-care. Use self-love. Love yourself. This isn't only for your benefit, but for the benefit of anybody you're leading. Whether or not you call yourself a leader is irrelevant. Whether or not you call yourself a leader is irrelevant. If you're leading in any way, shape, or form, then other people are impacted by how you talk to yourself and how you treat yourself. If you are a person who believes in the Bible, one of the main things it says is love your neighbor as you love yourself. How are you going to take care of other people and you're not even taking care of you? How are you going to love other people? I think my camera's a little tilted, y'all. Sorry about that. How are you going to love or take care of anybody else if you don't love or take care of yourself? And see, I'm a work in progress on this too. I'm doing better with my own self-care, but I have a ways to go. But one of the things that I refuse to do is to keep beating up on myself about past things. Sometimes that's hard. That's hard. I'm a person who believes in the importance of excellence, but for a long time, I believed the lies about perfectionism. I believed the lies that perfectionism were telling me about excellence, right? And so I was very hard on myself, and I'm sure hard on other people. And that can harm, that can affect, that can impact your excellence. And y'all give me a second. I'm gonna my grab my chapstick. It's so important to keep developing a mindset that is free from perfectionism, developing, and I am in a rolling chair and it rolled back on me. So here we go. Okay. Develop a mindset of anti-perfectionism. Develop and I guess you can call it a trauma-informed mindset. Understand what trauma is if you are recovering from trauma, and understand why you can't do things the way that other people do things. You have to give yourself grace. And as you give yourself grace, you will improve. But if you keep beating up on yourself, being hard on yourself, trying to do things like the other people who are not like you, who don't have a life like you, how they're doing things, pushing yourself and um, making yourself, forcing yourself to fit into other people's molds for how they get things done, you're basically just re-traumatizing yourself. You're basically trying to get yourself as a round plug into a square hole or vice versa. It's not going to work. It ain't going to work. It's not going to work. And that's something that's keeping you stuck potentially. A lot of times when Black women leaders are really trying hard to get a business going, to get a career going, to go back to school or go to school, to work on a creative project. A lot of times when they're not making forward progress in whatever their goal is, they will just beat up on themselves, say things like, oh, I have writer's block. Or they'll say things like, you know, they'll just say derogatory, awful, horrible things about themselves because they're not making progress without recognizing why they're not making progress. So this topic of recognizing why you're stuck, this is part of the conversation about planting your seed to transformation, because recognizing why you're stuck is part of plant. That is a seed to plant for your transformation. Recognizing why you're stuck. Is this blurry or is this just me? Yeah, this is a little blurry, isn't it? Give me a second, y'all. I'm so sorry, but give me a second. I'm going to see if I can adjust the video. But you can still hear me while I'm doing this. So I want to make sure you think about the fact that your forward progress doesn't have to look like how everybody else is doing it, y'all. It doesn't have to look the same. You don't have to do it the way that Robert Jones over there is doing it, because you're not Robert Jones. Robert Jones has his own unique path. You have your own unique path. Robert Jones may not have been through some of the things you've been through, and he may have had a leg up in some ways that you didn't have by virtue of being a male, for instance. So if you allow yourself time to sit and think and process through things and get support, we always talk about support in this show, having a community that supports you. If the community is your family, if your community is your friends, if your community is your therapist, if your community, yeah, this is really blurry, y'all. I'm so sorry. I don't know what's going on. Have to do some troubleshooting for next time. I know that the microphone is part of it. Yeah, it's because of this, the way I have this background set up, I think. Sorry, y'all. I'm distracted by watching myself. So I'm going to ignore this and just focus on talking to you. So I can't do this podcast the way that somebody else does their podcast. I don't have the resources to pay for a studio and have a studio audience live with me, or do something where I have, high level people who are usually paid for their speaking to come. That's not how I can do the podcast. That doesn't mean I can't do the podcast. It means that I can't do it like that. Some of my favorite podcasters, Lewis Howes. Oh my goodness, he has one of the greatest podcast production teams in the world, if not the greatest. The name of his podcast is something of greatness. I'm blanking out on it right now, but Lewis Howes is one of my favorite podcasters. He talks about mindset issues. There is nothing wrong with listening with me listening to him, but I can't be him, and I don't want to be him. So I have to do things differently. I don't have a huge team. I think he said he has 12 people or 20 people or something like that on his team. I have me. And one of my children does some personal assistant type things for me. But otherwise, it's just me here. I'm the only one producing the show through my business. And I do things differently because I know I can do it, but I have had to make some pivots to do it. I was sharing with some friends that the reason why I'm doing this podcast live now is part of my pivot. One of my social media / YouTube mentors is Stephanie Perry of Vicarious, and Stephanie Perry does lives. That's how she runs her um, her online presence for the most part. That's probably 90% of what she does is through her live YouTube videos. And she has if any of you all want to tap in, she's got a YouTube class or YouTube coaching that she does. Very good, very helpful. It's been very helpful for me. And I've learned some things from her that have been very helpful for me. And one of those is being brave enough to do these lives. These lives can be challenging because, for instance, when you want to put on some chapstick, everybody sees you putting on chapstick, and that's okay, but not for the perfectionist. The perfectionist version of me would never have done lives because you can't look perfect doing a live. So part of my perfectionism journey includes doing lives. And one of the great things that I love about the lives too is the interactive community in terms of people who have a larger audience, like Stephanie Perry or some of the other folks that I enjoy watching. You have community, and community is vital and critical to helping you to have a better perspective about yourself, but to also have a more realistic perspective of other people and of how other people see you and of how other people see how you impact them. Having community is critical. Being isolated, that is one of the quickest, easiest ways to set yourself back. As you plant your seeds of transformation, there's some watering that's going to be needed. There's some sunlight that's going to be needed. You're not going to get that in isolation. So part of planting your seeds of transformation is making sure that you get in community. YouTube is great. YouTube lives are great for linking up with community. And I've talked about this pretty much throughout all of the podcast seasons, the importance of having community. Prior to me becoming um, a not prior to me becoming a podcaster, because I've been a podcaster for a long time. Prior to me starting this particular podcast, I had been involved with an entrepreneurial community that I had become quite active with. I even got my kids involved in some of the things they were doing. It was great, but there were some things that were not a good fit for me and not a good fit for my family. And then we moved. That really made it not a good fit because we moved pretty far away from there. And so when I moved, I started finding more community online than anywhere else. And so there's nothing wrong with plugging in with online community. As a matter of fact, I have met some of my online friends in person, and I shared about that some. I don't know if any of the current audience would have known about it, but I shared about some of the meetups that I had in person. And I don't share everything because I like to protect people's privacy. Some people aren't on the internet and online like that and posting videos and pictures all the time, but some are. And so all of us actually shared in our different platforms. Some of them were YouTubers. So it's just important to know where your community is at and commit yourself to plug in with them as much as you can. I'm not perfect, absolutely not perfect. I have a lot of interruptions in my life, and I've shared some of that with you all that have kept me back from being able to plug in with community at times. And then I had my own internal disruptions. So I told you all before this season started, it was a real huge push for me to even do the season 4 at all because of the internal things that was going on with me. I had a lot of, I guess you could say, shame around the fact that our family has had so much going on. And I didn't want to burden other people with any of that. And I still don't want to burden other people with that. So I talk about what's relevant, but I'm not going to focus on trauma and crisis all the time. I bring up trauma and crisis to help you understand that it's okay. Whatever you're going through, it's okay. It's okay. You don't have to give up on your life goals or your dreams because of your trauma or crisis. You don't have to give up on it. You don't have to talk about it all the time either. But you do deserve support, and you need support from whatever community you found that's supportive. You deserve support. You need support. Get your support. Get your community. Plug in where you fit in. Okay. If that's locally, if that's online, if it's a combination of those things, get what you need. And most likely, you'll find people that you resonate with and that resonate with you. You'll find people that can relate and that have some similarities. One of the communities I plugged in with, I had no idea when I first started connecting with them that more than one of them was dealing with caregiving too. I am the caregiver to 2 adults. That's just my reality. And I'm okay with that. I love being able to be a help and a blessing or support for my family. I don't have a problem with that. But what I don't want to do is get online and talking about personal problems and other people's problems. What I do want to do is just to share that everybody goes through stuff and that's okay. But don't let yourself get isolated because of it. And so that's what it kind of happened to me a little bit earlier this year. I had gotten to the point where there was just so much going on all the time. I just started pulling back from my community in addition to not wanting to start the podcast. But there was part of my community that I plugged in with. They are the ones that encouraged me that it was important for me to share just because of the fact that I'm not the only one going through some tough, tough stuff. And because I'm not the only one, lifting my voice to share could help somebody else. Now, one of my biggest concerns about people getting isolated, especially people who might be caregivers, might be parents, people who have responsibility where they're not necessarily given an official leadership title. One of my biggest concerns is that folks like that are not only just isolated, but that they're not taking care of themselves because of the isolation and the lack of support for those types of people. And that's the honest truth. You hear all these different people talking about moms this and moms that, but the honest truth is that the statistics show that mothers are losing their lives in childbirth and after childbirth at record rates that have never been seen before. And this goes across the board, not just for um, a certain community, not just for people who are poor, not just for people who are people of color within the United States, not just for people who are not in the upper classes. This is across the board for race, ethnicity, class, economic status. It's across the board. This is a problem. Mothers are not getting the kind of support they need. And a lot of it is, unfortunately, bad teaching. And some of it bad teaching within the Christian church, just to be honest. Unfortunately, a lot of times when women need help and support, they're being shut down and not allowed to speak up and ask for that help within the communities that they should be able to trust to help them and support them. And so because of this, sometimes they're just suffering in silence and their blood pressure's too high, their blood sugar's too high. They are having their baby's preterm, they're having preeclampsia. That's a blood pressure thing. They're stressed out. and their blood pressure is just going up and up and up, and they're not getting proper support. This is ridiculous. Why are these women, these mothers, who are literally giving their lives to start new generations, why are they not getting enough support to where these numbers can be brought down? Well, I've heard some people talk recently about this topic of women being told to take care of themselves, but the community not being there to support them as they take care of themselves. And that's real, y'all, unfortunately. That's real. When it's convenient for certain institutions, such as the church, to provide help, they do. But if it's not convenient, they don't. So, for instance, a woman who has an autistic child, or a woman or a mother who has a spouse that's disabled while they're raising young children, they don't get the same kind of support as somebody like maybe has a school-age child that can easily just come and fit in with the regular programs at the church or whatever institution that they're plugging into. Might be a community organization. There may be certain things for certain kinds of mothers, but other mothers that need additional help, they have a hard time finding help. They may find the help eventually, and hopefully they will find the help somewhere before things get worse for them. So I just want to tell you this. Yeah, you got to take care of yourself. That's true. We all know that. Honest truth is, I get ticked off when people tell me, oh, just make sure you take care of yourself. Obviously, I know that I need to take care of myself. That's not the issue. The problem for me personally has sometimes been that the resources that I needed to be able to take care of myself properly while I'm taking care of other people, those resources have been difficult to access, or there have been other barriers put up by people not doing their jobs who are supposed to help you access them. Support or helpers, supporters, support personnel or helpers that aren't helping because they either don't care, don't understand, or a combination of those things. Ignorance along with apathy is a really bad combination. Having somebody that doesn't care about you is just as bad as somebody that's ignorant and doesn't understand how to do their job. They're incompetent. They don't understand how to do their job, or they don't even know what your need is, and that you need their help with something. So finding ways to pivot to get around these obstacles so you can get the support you need, so you can take care of yourself while you're taking other people. Let's talk about that. What does that look like? So on the last on the last episode, I talked about the fact that you can't wait for other people to save you. That doesn't mean that you don't deserve support. That's not what that means. What that means is that you got to learn the resources, the information, whatever you need to learn so you can go after the things that you need and want. Do that. Don't let waiting for somebody else keep you from at least knowing the information. I'll give you an example. I work for a company that provides medications to specialty medications to patients. And the work I do for this company enables those patients to access the medication more easily. But because sometimes information about this type of special medications, very specialized / expensive medications, sometimes the information that's available about these types of things is a little convoluted. It's very complex. Sometimes it can be extremely difficult to understand all the moving parts involved with A, getting your doctor to prescribe it, B, obtaining it. Okay. There's a lot that goes on between point A and point B. When your doctor prescribes it to the point where you can actually access it, get it, and take it, sometimes there's a lot of zigzags in the middle, in between those two, right? And so one of the great things I love about the job I do is I help to educate the patients so that they will understand some of those zigs and zags. And I also help them connect with some of those resources they need to get to that, to get to what they need. But when patients, A, are not willing to listen, B, aren't willing to read, C, just have a really negative attitude. Like, there have been times where I've gotten calls from people that just weren't listening at all. They were just so worked up that they couldn't hear. Like, they literally could not hear what I was saying to them. Like, I was offering them exactly what they asked for, and they were so worked up that they hung up without accessing what they asked for. And so these are just examples of what can happen to keep you stuck. When you need help, when you need something specific, you have a right to go after that thing. But you also have a responsibility to yourself to advocate for yourself by, first of all, knowing the information, asking questions until you get the answers that are helpful. Keep asking, ask follow-up questions. I'm a big proponent of follow-up questions. Ask the first question. What is this about? They tell you. Oh, okay. So I understand you said that, but what does X, Y, Z mean? Ask the questions. Talk until you get what you came there for. Ask the questions until you fully understand. That's one way to advocate for yourself. I have another example for you. Last time I talked about how there are several different types of therapies that can help someone that is recovering from trauma. Talk therapy is only one. That's only one. There are several other types of therapies that can help you, from massage therapy to acupuncture and beyond. There's a lot of things people are doing, and sometimes people are using spiritual resources to help them to recover. So there are lots of things you can do. But sometimes when people are stuck and with what we call limiting beliefs, or sometimes even lies or myths, they're not seeking any new information. They're not seeking to ask questions or get different answers than what they've heard before. They're just stuck on seeing one thing. So let's give an example. Let's say that it's a person who actually has a mental health condition that needs to be treated with actual medication. But let's say they just go to church or to their pastor, and let's say that their pastor or their church doesn't believe in that, right? Are they going to get the answers they really need when they're only asking the questions within that context, within the religious context, and they need actual mental health, biological help? They need a physician to prescribe something that will help their biological mental health, their brain health. Are they going to get that help when they're going to a religious person that does not believe in getting that kind of help? We know the answer to that. That's no. Sometimes you have to not just ask the right questions, you have to ask them within the right context. Go to the correct person, professional, whatever that can help you. Let's give another example on that. Let's say you have a broken leg. You fell from a 2-story home window. There was a fire. You jumped out. You broke your leg. Okay. Going to a pastor that doesn't believe in medical health care, that might possibly get you some great prayer, but it's not going to take away the pain, and it's not going to get your leg reset so it can heal correctly. right? So asking the right questions within the right context, that's part of advocating for yourself. Got another example for you. Here we go. If you are a person who is a caregiver, you may be able to relate to this. Sometimes specialty medications require a different kind of pharmacy. They call it a specialty pharmacy. You cannot get that medication at Walgreens or CVS or whatever local pharmacy is in your area most of the time. You actually have to go through your insurance company, get a specialty pharmacy to provide the medication to you. And there is usually quite a process for this. But if you go to Walgreens on the corner to try to get this medication, that's a specialty medication. Are you going to be able to get it? No. So you go there asking questions in the wrong place, the wrong context, you're not going to get much help. They may just simply tell you, no, we don't do that. You need to go to the specialty pharmacy. But they're not necessarily going to know which one is your specialty pharmacy. There are certain specialty pharmacies, all insurance companies pick which ones they're going to use for their patients. So who do you go to ask about this? Not Walgreens on the corner. You got to go back to your insurance company or your healthcare provider and find out who your specialty pharmacy is so you know the right number to call and so you can learn the right questions to ask. So sometimes advocating for yourself means not just that you're becoming aggressive and clapping back at people. That's not what I mean by advocating for yourself. Advocating for yourself is sometimes asking the right questions within the right context. And if you don't read or listen, you may not be able to ever learn this information so that you can advocate for yourself properly. So those of you who may sometimes feel a little bit intellectually lazy, you don't feel like reading those instructions that came with that bottle of pills, you don't feel like calling and talking to somebody when something comes up because you're tired or whatever, and you don't want to feel like being on hold on a toll-free number. Maybe you don't want to call or read right now because you're tired, but eventually you need to advocate for yourself by taking the time, making the time to do this stuff. Everybody's busy, but that doesn't mean that you can't take care of yourself. And I'm preaching to myself too. Everybody's busy. We all have responsibilities, but that doesn't mean that you can't make yourself a priority and make these little things like this a priority. Set aside 5 or 10 minutes to read the instructions. Set aside 30 minutes on your lunch, at work to call and get the correct number to call and call the people and ask the questions you need to ask. There's nothing wrong with you stepping back if it's a bad time, you're tired, whatever. But it's not good to stay in that step back / procrastination mode. Procrastination has its place. It can be good for you sometimes. Sometimes you need to procrastinate. For instance, having a tough conversation with somebody when you're hangry, not a good idea. Or, a lot of times wives will talk about the fact that they know to feed their husbands real good first before they ask certain questions, right? Want a new washer and dryer or something? You're not going to ask for that washer or dryer while your husband's hungry. You're going to feed him real good and say, honey, I think we need to, get out $1,000 from our savings and go ahead and buy this new washer dryer. Those are conversations you don't have at the wrong time. You may want to procrastinate on that. Okay. Procrastination has its place, but it has its place. And when it's out of place, it can harm you and not help. So advocating for yourself, sometimes that simply means that you stop procrastinating about some little things that at the time didn't seem all that important because you were tired, but now you see, oh, this is important. Another example, let's say that you have new insurance and you didn't receive your insurance card yet. but you have refills coming due for your medication. Let's say if you're like me, you take high blood pressure medication every day. You can't just not get the medication just because your insurance card information changed and you don't have that insurance information to update with your pharmacy. That's something you just can't keep procrastinating about. You got to get the information that you need. Now, one great thing nowadays is that most insurance companies now have apps and websites where you can view or download or even save your insurance card on your phone. But if you're not savvy with things like that, you got to make the phone call, right? To get the information so you can go ahead and make sure that your refills are done on time so you don't end up being out of balance with your self-care, your physical care of the medication you need or whatever it is that you need. So this conversation today has been all about making sure that you plant your seeds of transformation by advocating for yourself. We talked about this a little bit in the last episode. I wanted to bring it forward a little bit more here today because I've seen some things and I'm worried for my people. I want you to be better for yourself so you can be better for those you're leading. Whether or not you have the title of leader is irrelevant. You're a leader to the people whose lives you're impacting. You are. And you taking care of yourself and loving on yourself is important, not just for you, but for them too. And as I said, I'm preaching to myself too. So let's make sure that we think about these things. We keep thinking about things like this. Figure out, hey, am I procrastinating because I have trauma that's unresolved that I need to get additional therapeutic support with? Is that why I'm not communicating well? Is that why I'm not advocating for myself well? It's okay for you to start to acknowledge and recognize those signs of trauma. We talked about some a little bit in the last episode, and I also provided a resource that I thought would be helpful for those of you who might want to look that up. Sounds like a neighbor has fired up a powerful engine. I think that noise might be coming through the microphone. I hope not, but I apologize if it is. So anyway, it's okay for you to take a step back and look at things differently and see, is trauma making you stuck? Is trauma what's keeping you procrastinating and not making calls or finding information that you need so you can take better care of yourself and advocate better for yourself? Is trauma what's holding you back from even kind of wanting better for yourself? It's okay to take a look at these things, not for shame. This is not about shaming yourself. This is about doing whatever is needed so you can plant your seeds of transformation and start moving forward towards your dreams, your goals for yourself, and stop being stuck in the same place for years or decades when you know that's not what you really dream for and want for yourself. This is about recognizing what's needed so you can plant your seeds of transformation and start moving forward. Okay, so again, we talked about the importance of community also with all of this. So if you find yourself really super isolated, find a live like mine on YouTube Live every Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. We're late today, but every Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. I usually come on here to YouTube Live and record this podcast, okay? So find a live where you can plug in and get to know the people that are there and have support as you're moving forward to plant your seeds of transformation. You deserve that. You deserve to have a community of like-minded people that care about you. All right. So if you want to officially plug in with the community for the Plant Your Seeds of Transformation podcast, you can find all things out about that at PlantYourSeeds.show or find our Patreon at patreon.com/plant your seeds of transformation. And again, if you want to join the live, it's youtube.com/plant at, youtube.com/at Plant Your Seeds of Transformation. So you put the little @ first, Plant Your Seeds of Transformation on YouTube, and you'll find this podcast easily there. And of course, you can listen or watch the podcast on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and pretty much every podcast platform out there. If you go to PlantYourSeeds.show, you'll see several different podcast apps listed. Click on your favorite one and go listen or watch over there. I'm Coach Donna Marie. I think I forgot to introduce myself, y'all. I'm sorry. I'm Coach Donna Marie. And thank you for taking time with me today to listen or to watch the Plant Your Seeds of Transformation podcast. Hope to see you in one of the communities that I frequent or within my community that I've been creating over at PlantYourSeeds.show. God bless you. Bye-bye.